everyone, welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith. I'm very excited to dive into the battle in the fight phase for Townsfolk Tussle by Panic Roll. If you haven't checked out my prior videos for this Rolling Solo showcase, I'll put a link to them in the top right hand corner so you can get caught up to where we currently are right now. And really hope this video series helps you make an informed decision on the game. So a couple things to mention before we dive right into the battle, and that is, you'll notice Granny Melba is on the other side of the ditch from where she was in the setup at the end of the last video. That's because I found she has the Rudy Tudor, which is a ranged weapon of 5, and that ditch is a feature, which means we can actually shoot through it, and because of that, I'd rather her be a little bit further away. It actually works in her advantage, and you'll see that later on. There's a second thing and last thing that I missed from the prior video. It's around Quintus and what he could have done during the towns phase. So because I actually caught that, I'm going to go ahead and correct it right now because it gives him a pretty good benefit. In the bottom left-hand corner of Quintus's board, you'll see Petty Theft. It says you may take an item worth 5 coins or less from the peddler's shop at the beginning of each shopping session, which is pretty amazing. I knew what I was going to buy across all of the characters, and there was a handful of items I didn't purchase, and so I should have gone ahead and grabbed this one item right from the get-go in the towns phase when we were in the peddler's shop. So I'm doing this retroactively because, well, this is really going to help out Quintus. So he has one-handed bat in his hand right now, and the other item that I had from the prior video that I really had my eyes on but couldn't afford perfectly was Flingin' Stone. So that's going to be the item that we use this Petty Theft for in order to acquire, placing it in his left-hand slot. It's a ranged weapon, which will certainly give him a little bit more of a dynamic character build. At this point, we're all squared away and ready to begin the battle. We start taking a look at the beaten order. The Ruffian will always be in the top position, the townsfolk below it. We set this up in a prior video. The only time the order is going to change, unless otherwise stated by the game, is at the end of the fight phase. The townsfolk will rotate, but the Ruffian will always sit in that top position. So Will goes first, then Quintus, then Henlo, then Granny, and it wraps back around. To activate Will Barlow on his turn, we simply draw a card from the action deck. This one's called Haunting Presence. It says the souls inside Barlow's barrel screech at the group as Barlow zips by. The target is none. Sometimes this will say furthest townfolk or closest townfolk or something to that effect. This one is literally no target off the hop. We continue down using the arrows. It says turn towards the closest townsfolk and move forward. Then all townsfolk within 3 squares are haunted for 1 damage. That's pretty nasty. Now, the movement will be based on the Ruffian's movement, which you can see below is 7. It's worth mentioning that any type of determination of how far away anything is inside of this game is all done orthogonally. You're not going to do this on a diagonal angle. The only thing that's done on a diagonal angle is determining your line of sight, because certain types of terrain that are considered obstacles actually do block a townsfolk line of sight to the Ruffian. So it's worth noting that, but everything in terms of range away for weapons or range away from the Ruffian, all those types of things are all done by counting squares in an orthogonal manner, nothing diagonal. It's also worth mentioning that certain obstacles, like the tool shed for instance, or the town pond, which you'll see in a moment off to the left, both of those you can never stand on top of because they're obstacles. They basically block everything that is sitting inside of that particular area. So you're not going to be able to dive into the pond, and you're not going to be able to just jump on top of the roof of the tool shed. In order to use any of these obstacle terrain pieces, you just need to be adjacent to them orthogonally. So you cannot be on an angle. So Henlo, for instance, could not be 2 positions south on an angle to the tool shed and hope to interact with it. Also, some obstacles will state on the terrain card that you need to be in specific location around the obstacle, like the front door, versus being on the back side of the tool shed if the map actually opened up that far. But it's worth mentioning this because you couldn't interact with this tool shed if you're on the side of the tool shed. We'll talk more about the different types of terrain in a second, the ones we haven't mentioned already. Let's get back to Will Barlow's movement here. So first off, he's turning towards whoever's the closest townsfolk. Well, he's already facing the closest townsfolk, so it worked out pretty good that way. Quintus is the closest, 3 spaces away. Henlo looks close, but if you're going to count orthogonally to Henlo, it's actually 4 spaces away. So there you go. There's your determination of who's closest. And at this point, he's going to move forward, Ruffian. He's going to move forward based on his movement, which is 7. Now what's going to happen, as you can tell, is if he's moving forward 7 spaces, he's going to run straight into Quintus. And I'm going to talk to you about the choice you have when you're pushed away by the Ruffian in its movement. So of the 7 movement the Ruffian has, I'm going to move 2 to get the Ruffian adjacent to Quintus, and then I'll talk to you about the 2 different positions you can move yourself into. The Ruffian is now right up against Quintus and ready to do its 3rd point of movement, which will push Quintus. I have a choice as to whether I want to move Quintus north 1 space or west 1 space. This is where you can strategically decide where you want to be placed when you're being pushed, which is great for me because I'd like to get closer to the deserted picnic, and getting free movement towards that direction is actually not a bad thing. So I'm going to continue to move back 1 space west every time a point of movement is spent by the Ruffian. So the Ruffians used all of his movement, pushing Quintus all the way back to the deserted picnic, which is fantastic. The deserted picnic is considered a feature. If I want to actually interact with this on my turn in the future, I need to be on the tile itself to do so. So it'll take 2 movement, because I have to move 1 orthogonally and then 1 orthogonally again to get on top of this feature to rummage around inside of it. It's worth mentioning that the pond down below is considered an obstacle. Normally you can't draw line of sight as a townsfolk through a pond or obstacle towards the Ruffian, but this terrain card for the town pod states that the pond does not block ranged attacks for townsfolk, even though it's an obstacle. So you definitely can shoot straight across it. Also, the dangerous ditch is a feature, and features never block line of sight for the townsfolk shooting across it. So we're golden to shoot across that as well, which is why I put Granny on that side of the equation. And you can also see there is a buzzing hive down below. That is an obstacle, so we can't go on top of the hive. But if we're anywhere adjacent to that hive, then if a townsfolk or ruffian starts their turn adjacent to it, you take a damage from the bees stinging you. The dangerous ditch, as I mentioned, is a feature, and you have to be inside of that tile in order to try and interact with it with mocks, to try to rummage around and find hopefully something good, but there's a risk of something bad happening while you're in there too. Last but not least, we have 2 in the corner here. We have the Rickety Farm. It's an obstacle. You cannot go on top of the barn itself, but the actual terrain card specifically states, as most obstacles are, you have to be adjacent to it, and in this case, you have to be in a certain position. You have to be at the front door. That's the only space you can interact with the Rickety Farm, so you cannot do it from any of the sides of the barn that have fences or on the back side or whatever. You have to be right in front of that front door in order to use it. The Heidi haystack is a feature, so it's another one where you have to be on top of the tile itself, and then you can spend some mocks to try and attempt to hide in it. Now, after Will Barlow went ahead and did his big old push, shoving Quintus across the board here, from this point on, we determine who is 3 spaces away from Will Barlow, and those individuals take 1 point of damage from the wonderful ghosts. So we do take a point of damage on Quintus, bringing his health from 5 to 4. So it really didn't take long to already have one of our townsfolk get a nice hit of damage. We now move to the last row of the card. Not every card will have this after effect involved, but basically an after effect triggers if damage was placed on a townsfolk or otherwise stated within the game somewhere that it would trigger. So in this case it says, after effect, all townsfolk that took damage from this action are chilled to the bone. They cannot move on their next turn. So ironically, Quintus is actually up next, and he's not going to be able to move anywhere. When a townsfolk begins their turn, you're going to take a look at a couple things. You always want to keep eye on passive abilities or abilities that cost mocks to use. So you're going to, in essence, be always looking at how much mocks you have to spend and how much movement allotment you have as well. Now, in this case for Quintus, he can't move. So my allotment of 5 movement is useless for this particular turn, which is unfortunate, but that's okay. We can do some things with mocks instead. Now, there's a turn cheat sheet inside the game that literally breaks down things at a high level, things you can do as a townsfolk on your turn, and you can do them in any order you wish. It's also worth mentioning you can break up your movements. You can move a little bit, do an attack, move again. So as long as you stay within your allotment of movement, you can break it up in order to do other things, which creates some nice strategic thoughts that go around your head when you're playing the game. So as I mentioned, you can move, you can choose to interact with terrain, you have the ability to activate gear, you have the ability to activate your townsfolk abilities at the bottom of your player board, you have the ability to change out your gear for mocks, and you have the ability, of course, to attack. You'll always want to keep an eye on your feats of metal because they'll trigger at certain times within gameplay. You'll see Into the Fray says start your turn as the closest townsfolk and it can't be a tie. Well, we are definitely the closest townsfolk, so we're going to go ahead and resolve this one, which does say we can gain 2 coins or a +1 mocks this fight. Absolutely going to take that +1 mocks. I've gone ahead and bumped up Quintus's mocks, and that's really all he has to play with on his turn this time around because his movement has been washed away. So let's decide what he does, and it's most likely going to involve some type of an attack. For 1 mox, I'm going to go ahead and use the rubber bat. It's worth mentioning you can only use a weapon once on your turn, so you can't just use the rubber bat over and over and over again. So we're going to use it once. It's going to cost us 1 mox. It's going to do 1 damage if we're successful in landing a 5+. We can pull our accuracy from our player board into the equation, but our accuracy is currently at 0 for Quintus, so we're going straight up with a die roll, hoping for good results. 5+. Let's see how it goes. Oh, we landed it just barely. The bat, just the tip of the bat, was able to hit the wheelbarrow and do 1 point of damage. Will has 14 points of damage we need to get through in order to take him down. You'll notice there are red spots along the track. These are called breaking points, and every single time a breaking point is hit, the wonderful thing about it is it's going to interject and instantly end the townsfolk turn that is going, and we're going to draw a card for Will Barlow and activate him essentially. So basically it throws a wrench into whatever plans you thought you might have had across 3 townsfolk when you're playing solo in a given round. So it causes quite some interesting things happening. Plus, if the ruffian happens to also heal back up over the breaking point, that can also throw that situation into the equation. So it becomes quite dynamic in terms of how these breaking points work. So it's not just simply knocking his health down, as simplistic as that. You got to also watch for when those breaking points occur. We did 1 point of damage. We're dropping from 14 to 13, so we're okay. If we hit 1 more damage, we will trigger a breaking point. If we were to hit for 2 more damage from the 13 position, we would also trigger a breaking point. So anytime you either land on or cross the red area, that's what triggers it. I've got 2 mox remaining. I'm going to go ahead and use the Flingin' Stone, so anything within range 3 is fine to use a ranged weapon. This is 1 mox spend and 1 damage if it lands. We need a 6+, and we got ourselves this. Oh my gosh, I'm landing these things perfect. That is going to land us on our very first breaking point, which ends Quintus's turn, and now we're going to go and activate Will Barlow. It looks like Will Barlow will be harvesting a soul. Barlow's ghost friends are drawn to your youthful vigor. Target townsfolk with the highest HP. Well, it's kind of funny because there are 2. Granny Melba and Quintus are both at the exact same health. So we're going to be rolling a die, and whoever rolls the lowest is going to be the target. Granny Melba is going to roll first and lands a 3. Quintus is now going to roll. Let's see what happens. We get ourselves a 9. That's pretty high. So Granny is going to be the target of this attack. It states to move towards the target. If Barlow reaches them, then trigger the after effect. I'm pretty sure Barlow's going to be able to make it there. Will Barlow's going to swing around and move 7 to Granny. Actually, it appears we got really, really lucky. There needed to be 8 movement for them to be orthogonally adjacent. So because Granny is 1 space further away, thank goodness we put her on the other side of the ditch. That worked out really well. The after effect is not going to trigger. We now resume the normal turn order after that breaking point. It kind of interjected itself in there, and it's going to be Henload next. And the cool thing you want to keep your eye on again is feats of metal for anybody, because you can see good company. It says if another townsfolk achieves 2 or more feats this round, achieve this feat. And in this round, Quintus was able to finish off a second one. So good company now triggers. We can either take 3 coins or we could get a +1 accuracy, which is really good because it will actually bring us to a 0 instead of having a -1 right now. The great thing is this is the first townsfolk that's going to actually be able to use the allotment of movement it has, and Henlo has the highest movement across all my townsfolk at 6 and mox value of 2. So let's figure out what Henlo's going to do, and I can tell you right now the tool shed is of high interest. So with Henlo at the tool shed, as an obstacle, it says when at the door, 1 mox, search the shed. We go ahead and roll. Again, we do not add our accuracy rating into this equation unless it states that we would. So we're going to go ahead and roll the die and see how we land. Oh my gosh, 8 is really good. It says you find something that might be of use. Receive the first one-handed weapon from the peddler deck. You may equip it immediately. Tool shed can be no longer activated. Now let's take a look at the other things that could have happened. It said 3 to 5 would have been nothing but spiders. The tool shed can no longer be activated. That's bad. And then 1 to 2 is really bad. There's a raccoon in here. It claws your eyes for 1 damage. Tool shed can no longer be activated. So we got the best possible result. Just to remind myself that that particular terrain piece cannot be interacted with again, I just flipped it upside down. You don't have to do this. I do this just to simply remind myself it still stays as an actual obstacle within the game that I can't move on top of or anything like that. When I went through the deck to find the first one-handed keyword item, I just kept revealing cards until I found one as depicted in the rulebook, and the first one that came across after about 5 cards was the Sure Shot Crossbow. Now, any cards that you happen to pull up and reveal as you're looking for the card that you've received as a reward, you can put them at the bottom of the deck. And I got this Sure Shot Crossbow, which is, well, it's a sure shot. Look at the accuracy rating. It's a +1 is all we need to land or above, and we're golden, so that's awesome. It does have a range of 4. It costs a lot of mox, more mox than most weapons, but it does do 1 point of damage. It's a good weapon to have. Gone ahead and immediately equipped it. As is stated, it is now in right hand, so we have a wheat sickle. This again makes this character dynamic as we have a melee and ranged weapon available. Now, because I already spent 1 mox and I only have 1 more left, I'm not going to be able to use my movement to then take a long-range shot at the ruffian, unfortunately. The only thing I could try to do is get right up adjacent to it and then use 1 mox for the wheat sickle to do an attack, but the chances that I have enough movement for 6 squares to get there is not going to happen. So I really just want to position myself in a way that keeps me far away from the ruffian, but also maybe within range close enough to pull off maybe a crossbow attack in the future, and then, or even potentially both the wheat sickle and the crossbow later on. I decided to move Henlo 4 spaces south. I still have 2 more movement left to spend. The reason I'm stopping right now is I want to explain the fact that Dangerous Ditch being a feature, I can walk through it. When I choose to move into any space inside of that terrain piece for the townsfolk, as it states on the terrain card, it costs 2 movement to traverse into it. So for the last 2 movement, I'll get into the very first southern square. Perfect. And now while I'm in here with 1 mox remaining, I could actually attempt to scavenge in the ditch. With our final mox, we're going to go ahead and scavenge in the ditch to see if we find something good, and we just nail it perfectly. It's an 8+ to get the best result. 1 to a 7 actually would have been pretty nasty. It would have had us stepping on broken glass and losing movement. Just barely got through that. And it says it says this could be useful. Receive the first card from the peddler deck worth 7 coins or less, and you can equip it immediately. This is so cool. It says Hive on a Stick. It's a melee weapon, one-handed. It's a wand. It does, for 2 mox, it does 2 damage with an accuracy of 6 or higher. It says if you whiff, and just so you understand what a whiff is, it's when you roll and you get the opposite of what a crit would be. There's a crit on the die. If you get a 1, that's a whiff. So if you whiff with this weapon, natural roll of 1, you take 2 damage. So it does have a bad side. Henlo is getting geared up for war here, so I'm going to immediately go ahead and equip this, taking the wheat sickle and putting it in my stash off to the side. Hive on a Stick and Sure Shot Crossbow, they're going to both be great. Now, one thing I want to point out about the Dangerous Ditch, I told you it costs 2 movement to move into any square on the terrain for townsfolk, but as you'll see here, it mentions that it does not affect ruffians or movement via gear or abilities, so that's an exception. Now, with these weapons in hand, I really want to try to push the envelope to potentially put some extra damage on the ruffian as fast as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to discard the soda pop that I have, which states discard the soda pop and take an additional turn after this one. So right now we get to go a second time, basically renewing my allotment of mox as well as my movement. I have 6 movement. What I'm going to do is move 1 space north, and then I'm going to move the rest of the spaces, 5 of them, to get right behind the ruffian, where I plan to use the Hive on a Stick for hopefully a successful attack. So we need a 6+, and our accuracy is at 0, so nothing to help there. We're really hoping we don't whiff this with a 1. We got ourselves a 4 that is not going to work out in our favor, so we end up missing with the Hive on a Stick. Now, one thing I want to make mention of that I didn't take advantage of, and actually, luckily, didn't even need to, but I will going forward, is Henlo has the Farmer's Overalls, which give a +1 to any kind of interactions with terrain rolls. So when I did the tool shed, I would have got a +1. When I did the ditch, I would have got a +1. But as you know, I succeeded at both of those without even needing that +1. And it mentions also you get an additional +1, so +2 in total, if you're dealing with the overgrown cornfield. That is not in this particular battle, but the Heidi Haystack is. So that might come in handy later on. Granny Melba is up next, and she has 2 mocks as well as 5 movement. She has the ability to hit something when she's orthogonally adjacent with her cane, or the Rudy Tutor from distance. She has the stuffed briefcase, which allows her to change out gear she's carrying with her stash, although she has nothing in her stash right now, for a little less mocks than normal. It usually is 2, it could drop down to 1. Pretty nice. And she has a couple of feats of metal she needs to keep her eye on. She has the Peacekeeper one, which says that she needs to land the final blow on the Ruffian, so we can try to make that happen. And then Unshakable is if your movement, mocks, or ACC or accuracy are lowered by a Ruffian action, then you achieve the feat automatically. Now, taking a look at her positioning right now, she has 2 different options, a melee weapon or a ranged weapon. The crazy thing that she has going for her with the Rudy Tutor is that if she can get far enough away from the Ruffian, she gets to take advantage of her passive ability called Farsighted, which allows her to add a certain amount of square spaces away from the Ruffian in accuracy. So essentially, she is at a -2 right now, but if she can be as far away as possible and her Rudy Tutor can hit from a range 5, then she can add 5 to her accuracy, which can swing her -2 accuracy to a +3, which definitely helps to make sure that that damage lands. And the Rudy Tutor does 2 damage. So she really wants to be as far away as possible. So let's make that happen. So I'm going to use 3 of her 5 movement to make sure she moves away in a position that is 5 away from the Ruffian. She's now going to go ahead and spend 1 mocks using the Rudy Tutor to take a shot. So she's got a +3 accuracy going into this, really helps out the die roll. And we got a 5, so that makes it an 8, which is a success, and that is going to do 2 damage. Now it mentions right on here, when used, the Rudy Tutor cannot attack on the following turn. So I'll turn this thing sideways to remind myself I can't use it next time. So that's 2 damage going towards Will, down to 10. The next breaking point is 3 away. She does still have 2 movement available. I'm going to have her move 2 squares to the south. And that's going to end off Granny's turn. Nothing else I want to do. So now we go to Will Barlow's turn, pulling a card from the action deck. This one is called Entomb. Barlow sends the scenery 6 feet under. The target is the closest obstacle, and if none, discard this and play the next card in the action deck. As you can see, we have 2 obstacles equal distance from Will Barlow. We have the Buzzing Hive and the Town Pond. Now, just to remind you what each of these do, the Town Pond being an obstacle, normally you couldn't draw line of sight through it, but this one specifically states you can draw line of sight from the townsfolk to the Ruffian through that obstacle. And then the Buzzing Hive here, that Buzzing Hive is actually going to hurt anybody that stands adjacent to it, whether you're a Ruffian or a townsfolk. You're going to take a point of damage. So I don't know which one's a better choice here. And in this situation where they're equal distance, the players could just choose, but instead, just to make it even more fun, I'll roll for each of them. Whichever gets the lowest roll is the one that is going to suffer. So the Buzzing Hive is going first here. We got ourselves a 7. The Town Pond is going to be an 8. So it's going to be the Buzzing Hive that takes the effect. It states on the card that Will Barlow will move towards the target now, which is the Buzzing Hive. And if Barlow reaches the target, trigger the after effect. We know it's going to happen. It's only 3 spaces away. The after effect says Barlow covers the target in a mountain of dirt. It collapses under the weight. Deal 1 damage to all townsfolk within 2 squares of the target. Then remove the target from the board. And Granny Melba is so close to being affected by this, just outside of the range. So Will Barlow is going to move 2 spaces in order to be right up against the Buzzing Hive obstacle, is now going to go ahead and cover it in a mountain of dirt. Any townsfolk that are within 2 spaces of the Buzzing Hive are going to take a damage, so that's absolutely nobody, but I will go ahead and flip over this terrain card at this point as it is completely gone. At this point, we begin with Quintus, and he definitely wants to get to that deserted picnic. He's going to move 1 space to get adjacent to it, and then 1 more space to get on top of this feature terrain. Now that he's there, let's check out the terrain card and see what happens next. It says for 1 mocks, he can scavenge for goodies. We can roll right now. 1 to 6, we find nothing, and you can see we continually can try to find something. If we roll 1 to 6, we're going to find nothing, but at 7 plus, something is left behind. We receive the first card from the peddler deck worth 9 coins or less. You can equip it immediately, and then you discard the picnic from the board because it's been rummaged through. So let's see how well we do here. No accuracy bump on this one, just a straight roll, and we landed a 7. Our rolls are amazing right now, although we haven't past everything we've done so far, but we've done pretty good. Haven't got any criticals yet, though. That's what I'm really hoping for in the future. But this is still going to give Quintus hopefully something really good. So let's go from the top of the peddler deck, revealing a card at a time until we find one that's worth 9 coins or less, the first one. The first one we ended up pulling is the lasso. It says for 1 mox, a ruffian within 3 squares has 0 movement during their next action, usable once per fight. So we can actually keep the ruffian in place. That's really cool. Now Quintus already has an accessory equipped, so if we equip this one right now, we have to put the stolen candy in a stash, and if we want to bring it back out into this accessory slot, we'd have to pay some mox to do it. I'm not really worried about paying mox with Quintus in the future because, well, he's got quite a bit on every turn, but in this case what I'm going to do is actually leave the stolen candy here slotted in already, and the lasso is actually going to go into the stash for later. And as the card stated, we're going to go ahead and remove this feature terrain from the board, and I'll flip over the terrain card because this thing is gone and been rummaged through. Quintus still has 3 movement available, but as you noticed moments ago, I still have that stolen candy slotted in. I could actually consume that candy to put myself in any empty square on the entire landscape and then still be able to move 3 after that. I'm going to place him right in front of the ruffian, and we are going to use the rubber bat for 1 mox to try to make an attack right now. Hopefully this goes well. It's worth mentioning after I do this rubber bat attack, I still have 2 mox afterwards and still 3 movement, so I got options. Let's go ahead and roll this die here, see how we do. Again, we take a look at our accuracy when making these attacks, but Quintus's accuracy is 0 on his player board currently, so we just need a 5+ to land the damage, and we did it again. I think he's done that in the past too, where he just barely gets the damage off. The ruffian has now been knocked down to 9 health. We need 2 more health to hit the next breaking point and also be halfway through the ruffian's original 14 health. I'm going to go ahead and have Quintus move back 2 spaces, is now going to use the range attack with the flinging stones from range 3, which he is from the ruffian. We're going in needing a 6+ on this die roll, and we definitely missed. This is what is considered a whiff. When you land a natural 1 when attacking a ruffian, then it is an automatic miss regardless of the weapon's ACC requirement. I've got a strategic plan with Quintus because he has a siren hat on, and for my last mox, I'm going to go ahead and use it, and I'll be placing this on the game board so I don't forget. It states on it, if the next action targets a single townsfolk, it targets you instead, usable once per fight. So it's going to be used once, but essentially I'm going to put all the heat from the siren on Quintus no matter who this ruffian goes up against next. So we'll keep that on the game board to remember that. The reason I'm doing this is because Quintus already has a point of damage. Nobody else is injured yet, and there is the potential, if I go to the rickety farm, I might roll and be able to heal up. So if I want anyone to take additional damage, I'd prefer to be on the same townsfolk so I can try to make use of a potential heal at the barn, or the farm I should say. So this could work out, but it may not. And with his final movement point, he'll go ahead and just move 1 closer to that front door. Alright, so starting Henlo's turn here, we're going to go ahead and attempt to use the hive on a stick, but I need to get close enough to do it. So let's use some of the 6 movement that Henlo has, and then when I choose whichever weapon I want, they both cost 2, so that's going to suck up all the mox I have. Henlo is definitely going to have to use 4 movement, as each movement through the dangerous ditch costs 2 apiece. So 4 movement of the 6 burnt just to get behind the ruffian. With Henlo wielding the hive on a stick, we're going to go ahead and throw the die here and hope for something good. 6+ is what I want to see, and we got it right on. So that is going to be 2 damage. It says if you whiff with this weapon, of course, a natural roll of 1, you take 2 damage. That's always the risk with that one, as I mentioned prior, but we landed it, and guess what? That is going to force a breaking point. So now we're immediately ending Henlo's turn right here, and we're going to go and draw an action card for Will after we put 2 damage on Will. That's pretty awesome to see. We're halfway there. We're going to go ahead and pull a card and see what kind of pain is coming our way. It says here, Gravestone Chew, you notice Barlow munching on something crunchy. What's he planning? The target is the closest townsfolk, but as you remember, right now the Siren Hat is going off for Quintus. So even though the closest target is Henlo, it's going to be Quintus that actually takes this instead. And it says Barlow spits gravestone rubble in your direction, ranged attack. If the target is within 4 squares, which, well, poor Quintus is, he's going to take 2 damage and then move Barlow towards the furthest townsfolk. So Quintus is going to take that damage, and Quintus is actually the furthest townsfolk away, so the ruffian is going to move right up adjacent to him. That Siren Hat really did come in handy because I was able to keep all that damage on a character that can really hold as much damage as possible from the 3 that I have available. Plus, I'm definitely going to beeline Quintus on his turn in the future to the door to try his best to try and trigger a heal or some type of an attack from there. But as of right now, we have Will Barlow barreling down on Quintus. That's going to do it. The ruffian is now in place. The Siren Hat ability no longer exists because it's only usable once a fight. It only happens on the next action, and that was just it. So we'll put that aside. It doesn't go away from the loadout of Quintus because it's still giving Quintus a +1 max HP. It's still an item that he wants equipped all the time, but that ability is done for the fight. We now move to Granny Melba, and Granny definitely wants to do some damage, but cannot use the Rudy Tutor in this turn because she used it previously, and I've turned it sideways to remind myself of that. But I could use Granny's cane, and she is pretty close, so we're gonna have Granny just step 1 movement point towards the ruffian and try to hit with her cane. So Granny's going to walk in using her cane. We're going to grab a die here. Her accuracy is -2, and there's nothing she can do to change it when she's doing a melee attack. So we're really hoping for a big time roll here. Use 1 point of movement to get closer, and we got ourselves a 7 -2 is a 5. We were able to pull it off. That's ridiculous. So we did get the 1 damage at the end anyway. 1 more damage puts the health of the ruffian down to 6. Now I have nothing else I really want to spend Mox on at this point. I could have her head to the barn and interact, but I'd much rather have Quintus do that in the future. So I think I'm just going to use the rest of her movement. She already used 1 of the 5. The 4 movement she has left just to get away from the ruffian. I'm going to have her hightail it over towards the hidey haystack, and maybe she can hide inside of it. Again, she's a good ranged character, so we can keep her close enough to be able to do a pot shot on the next turn around. So for now, we'll just have her run over there to stay out of harm's way. I'm not going to lie, right now I'm pretty concerned about Quintus being really, really close to the ruffian, and the ruffian going in a moment here with his health at 2. Things could get dicey. And that, my friends, is where we're going to stop things as we begin a brand new round, starting with Will Barlow coming up next. I can tell you right now, I'm a bit terrified. Quintus is right up against the ruffian. He's already the most hurt individual of the 3 townsfolk by a landslide, and his health is getting down to the bottom, which is a bit terrifying. Now, I have no idea what's going to come out of the deck on the next turn, but I will tell you, when I've played Will Barlow along with a number of other bosses off camera, I know specifically for Will Barlow, he has cards in there that tell him to go ahead, not only resolve the card as we've seen happen, but also draw another card after resolving the one you're currently on. So there is a potential ripple effect in this deck where you can pull a card, resolve it, and then have to pull another card, resolve it, pull another card, resolve it, and that kind of waterfall can become extremely dangerous, and it can throw all kinds of wrenches into whatever plans you think you had. So I'm feeling pretty good so far, but the deck has not been reshuffled, so I'm getting more and more concerned that these cards are coming my way, and when they do, it's really going to shake this gameplay up. So that's going to wrap things up. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully this is giving you a great idea as to how the game flows and operates in a solo capacity. I know there's a lot of people that came at this co-op boss battler thinking this is the better game for multiplayer, but I can tell you right now from experience playing it solo, I'm having a blast with it, really enjoying it, and really the only thing that's removed from the game is just some of the secret town events, which beyond that, you're playing the exact same game, but you get full control over the synergies and how your characters and what they do on their turns, and it's a lot of fun, and it moves really quickly, especially when you're controlling all 3, because you know exactly what you want to do inside of your own strategy against the boss. And that's what makes this thing just move so fluently. Plus, what's really cool is that there's just not a lot of rules overhead, so you're not going to be bogged down looking in the rulebook every 5 seconds trying to figure out what to do next. The gameplay is quick, fast, and it is entertaining. So really looking forward to seeing how this particular fight pans out, because I feel good about it, but things could go south very quickly, as I mentioned before. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below, as I mentioned, what do you think about the game so far? If you own it, what are your thoughts about it solo? If you don't own it, you skipped on the Kickstarter, and you're kind of curious about the Kickstarter or whatever campaign is coming down the line in the future, I think it might be actually be going to GameFound instead, and any expansions that come with it, let me know. Is there interest now? Did this playthrough start piquing your interest more, less, in between? You're unsure? Let me know. I would love to hear your feedback. Thank you guys so much, and as always, keep on rolling solo.